Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning.
We are learning Mishna Bava Kamma, Parak Zayin, Chapter 7, Mishnah Dal, Mishnah 4. Okay. Ganav al Pishnayim. A person stole based on the testimony of two witnesses. Two witnesses said that he stole. The Tavach Umachar, and then regarding his slaughtering or selling, that was brought about, that was testified, either by one witness or by himself. So again, the case is we have witnesses that he stole, but regarding the slaughtering or selling, regarding the payments of the total of 4 or 5, that we either know based on one witness or by his own admission. The answer is, says the Mishna, Misham Tashlumei Kefal, this Ganef is going to pay double because we have witnesses that he stole. But he will not pay the payment of 4 or 5. Because if the case is that we only know the payment of 4 or 5 that he slaughtered or sold based on one witness, one witness isn't enough. If the case is that we know it because he admitted, so for that we apply a principle called Meida B'Knas Potter. If you admit to a fine, so then you are actually exempt from the fine. So although, we'll read to you from the notes, although someone who admits that he owes money is usually obligated to pay, and especially if he admits to the obligation, that rule applies only to regular monetary obligations, such as debts, damages, and the like, and not to fines such as the 4-fold and 5-fold payments. The fact that you pay even kefal, right, the double payment, that's called a fine, because it's not per what you did, it's extra, it's a fine. 4 or 5 also, it's more than what you did, and it's also set no matter what. And it's also, I should say that doesn't apply here, but it's more than what you did, and therefore that's called a fine. If it's a knas, if it's a fine, the rule is ma'ida b'knas pater. You admit to having to pay a fine, you're exempt. You admit to a monetary obligation, then we say your admittance is like 100 witnesses. But if it's a fine, then the halacha is that you are exempt. So at the end of the day, this ganef will pay kefal because we have witnesses to that. But since we don't have witnesses to the fact that he paid 4 or 5, then he is not obligated to have to pay that payment. Now this part of the Mishnah is going to be going going back on cases we had before that were similar, but in those cases you had to pay, and in these cases the halacha will be that you will not. So ganav v'tabach b'Shabbos. The person stole an animal and he shechted it. When did he shecht it? On Shabbos. Now, if you shecht an animal on Shabbos, what can happen to you? Chayiv misa, right? So the halacha is that when you have a more severe punishment and a less severe punishment coming together from the same act, which would obligate you for 2 punishments, the halacha is kimle b'derabimine. You take the greater one and the lesser one, you are exempt. And not only are you exempt in a case where it's actually going to be, the greater punishment is going to be administered, even if it's not administered, it was done accidentally, and therefore you're not going to get capital punishment for it. But because it's the kind of act, the kind of sin that could carry a punishment of death, that will exempt you from the smaller punishment. So in the case of Ganav v'Tabach b'Shabbos, he stole and he shechted it on Shabbos. His shechting on Shabbos was desecration of Shabbos. So it's something that carries the punishment of desecrating Shabbos and paying 4 or 5. The Mishnah is going to say at the end, you're not going to have to pay that 4 and 5 because since it was done on Shabbos and your desecration of Shabbos carries a death penalty, you will not be obligated to pay. Similarly, the next case, Ganav v'Tabach l'Avodah Zarah. He stole, and when he shechted it himself for idol worship. Now, if you shecht an animal for the purpose of serving an idol, again, you're chayiv misa, and there you're liable to a death penalty, and therefore that's the kind of act. Since the kind of act that carries the death penalty, you will not have to pay the 4 or 5 payment. Next, Ganav Mishal Aviv. Now this is a different case. This next case has nothing to do with the principle we said before. Ganav Mishal Aviv. He stole from his father. Okay. Umeis Aviv. Then his father died. All right. So now that animal that was stolen it now is in the possession of whom? The heirs of his father, which includes him. And then he went and he slaughtered it, or he sold it. Okay, so this is definitely a stolen animal, right? Mm-hmm. And it passed on as a stolen animal to the heirs, mm-hmm. and now he shechted it and he sold it. You know, it would have to pay 4 or 5. Well, one thing for sure, he doesn't have to pay 4 or 5 to himself, right? The part of the animal that belongs to him because he's an heir, right? There's no problem shechting that. Yeah. It's the rest of the animal. Yeah. And we have a source that tells us that if the entire animal was not shechted in a forbidden manner, meaning if the whole animal is not forbidden to shecht, because it's partially yours, that part of you're okay, you can do what you want with it, mm-hmm. then there is no payment to 4 or 5. So he's going to have to pay kefil, right? The double he has to pay, because he stole from his father. And he has to pay the double to his heirs, which means the portion of kefil that should go to him, he doesn't have to pay. He gets discounted. He have to pay that. However, so the rest of the kefil has to pay to his brothers, mm-hmm. But the 4 and 5 he's exempt from. Mm-hmm. Next, Gonav v'hikdish v'chakach tovach u'machar. Okay, this case is the guy stole. Mm-hmm. He then was makdish. He consecrated the animal. Mm-hmm. Then he shechted it or sold it. Okay, so now, here's the case. The case here is that reading to you here from the notes, he designated the animal as an offering. That's the case here. Now, we know when you're makdish something, you can be makdish it in 2 ways. You can consecrate it as an offering, as a carbon, or you could basically donate it to the Beis HaMikdash, make it the Beis HaMikdash's property. Mm-hmm. Now, in each case, of course, you can't have any kind of personal benefit from it. Okay, but this case is going to be a case where when the Ganef was makdish it, when he consecrated it, it means for a carbon, for a sacrifice. And let's just get the case first, and we'll go back to distinguishing what kind of hektish would make a difference. Okay, so he designated the animal as an offering. Okay, now, when he slaughtered the animal, it was already consecrated. That's the case. Ganav, he stole it, v'hikdish, and then he consecrated it, and then he slaughtered it. So when he slaughtered it, it was already consecrated. So therefore, whose animal was he shechting? Whose animal was he slaughtering? The original owners or hektish's? Hektish's. Okay, he's slaughtering hektish's, and they bring down here it is derived from the Torah that if a thief slaughtered or sold an animal that he consecrated, he's exempt from the 4-fold or 5-fold payment. Okay, so therefore he is exempt. And now, in the situation of okay, I don't know why the Mishna had to use that case, but the case of the Mishna is he stole it, he sanctified it, and then he slaughtered it. And what would have been if he would have stole it, consecrated it, and sold it? What would have happened then? I mean, it says here, although consecration can also mean giving an item to the temple treasury, that is not its meaning here, because consecration of that type is considered a sale. Okay, meaning if you give it away to hektish, it's a sale. Mm-hmm. My understanding is that if you go ahead and so you stole it, right? Now you're makdishing it as giving it to hektish. That's the same thing as giving it away to somebody, right? What's the difference between whether you sold it to somebody else or you sold it to hektish, you gave it to hektish. It shouldn't make a difference, and there you're going to be chayiv to pay the 4 or 5. But when the question is that you consecrate it as a carbon, for some reason that's not considered like transferring the ownership to hektish, like if you give it to just as a monetary gift to hektish. And there we say that when you slaughter it, you're slaughtering that which belongs to hektish, and that which belongs to hektish we derive that the payment to 4 or 5 does not apply. All right, but that's the case in the Mishnah. Now, you may wonder, how could a thief consecrate stolen property? It's not his, right? You can't consecrate something that's not yours. I can't go over to your thing and say it should be a carbon. So here he stole it, somebody else's article. How is he being makdish it? How can he sanctify it? And the answer is, the Mishnah, though, refers to a situation where he consecrated the animal after the original owner has despaired of getting it back, in which case the consecration does take effect. The point is, we're talking about where you know that the owner was miyayish. That means he gave up, he despaired from getting it back. By despair from getting it back, he's already relinquished at some level his ownership. At that point, it's possible for the ganav to go ahead and sanctify it. To go over to your regular object and sanctify it doesn't work. But if he stole it, which means he took it into his possession, and the owner gave up a despair of ever getting it back, then already has the ability to go ahead and to consecrate it. Okay. So the Mishnah says, and it concludes for all these cases that it concludes. That was the last case. He stole and he sanctified, and afterwards he slaughtered it, or he sold it. Oh, I missed that word. Mm-hmm. He stole it, or he sold it. Yeah. Okay. So either way, once it's already hektishes, the dollar v'hei payment isn't going to make a difference. You know, it's interesting. I just have to point this out. In the first cases, by Shabbos and Avodah Zarah, it's just the case that he slaughtered it, because that's the only time you have you could be liable to a death penalty. The other cases, we stole from the father, and then the father died, and then he stole it or sold it, or he stole it and was makdash it, then he stole it or sold it, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, again, in both those cases, you have mechira, you have selling it. Yeah. But again, that just means that you sold it to somebody else. The halacha is that, says the Mishnah, Misham tashlumei kefal, you're going to pay double, because when you stole it, it was a regular article that you stole from someone. But in all these cases, you will not be paying the payment of 4 or 5. Okay, now, there's one part left of the Mishnah, but I guess we will save this for tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. You'll be back.